Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Okay, today we are talking about the Crossroads, don't, and the 27 Club, don't. I think most all of you know that I'm a professional musician and that I had my crossroads moment, and instead of taking the deal, I turned it down. You can see that video in my Sell My Soul True Crossroads Story video. And, but this concept of selling your soul for fame and fortune is it's a story that goes back a long time. I guess the very first telling of this is what's called the Faustian tale, where a man named Faust gave his soul to the devil for money and was betrayed. He was double-crossed by the devil, no surprise there. And, he didn't get to enjoy his riches, but he still lost his soul. Sorry if I'm sweating like crazy. I'm drinking coffee, and it's pretty hot in here. I haven't got any air conditioner. It is Texas. But, you have what's called that Faustian tale, and then it goes on to the story of Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson was an African-American bluesman who lived and died in the 1920s and 30s. And Robert Johnson, from all tellings, was not a very good musician. In fact, he was often thrown out of these juke joints for jamming on the artist's guitar and annoying the crowd with his lousy guitar playing. He was a bit of a joke, in fact. The thing is, Robert Johnson kept trying anyway, because back in those days, there was really only a couple options for African Americans in the Deep South. They could be sharecroppers, they could pick cotton, they could tend tobacco fields, or they could be, juke joint, honky-tonk, and bluesmen. And so one could argue that the basis, I got a little rooster tail sticking up there, the basis for rock and roll, the birth of rock and roll as we know it today, comes from the guitar playing of Robert Johnson. Don't. If I had a guitar or a keyboard here, I'd show you, but it's that that driving kind of bass line, which is present in those early blues recordings. Robert Johnson recorded 29 songs in his short life in two different recording sessions, one in Texas, in Dallas, and one in California, I believe. So, Robert Johnson, but he wasn't a very good musician, and he disappeared for about, some say a few weeks, some say it was more than a year. Maybe he went away in the woodshed and practiced a whole bunch. But the myth that he liked to tell in his lyrics, the mythology that he liked to cop to, was that he met the devil at the crossroads, and he sold his soul to the devil for the ability to play the guitar. Don't. This story is retold in an odd way, an interesting way, in a movie called The Crossroads with Ralph Macchio. And it has some amazing guitar playing by Steve Vai, who performs in the movie as the devil's guitar player. And the concept of cutting heads or challenging the devil's musician to a jam-off, to a band, to band war, challenging him to a battle of musicianship to reclaim your soul is something that that I heard for the first time in the Devil Went Down to Georgia, the Charlie Daniels band crossover hit from the 70s. The devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind because he was way behind. He was willing to make a deal. When he come up on this boy playing his fiddle and playing it hot, the devil jumped up on Hickory Stump and said, "Boy, let me tell you what. You may not know it, but I'm a fiddle player too, and I'll bet your soul that I'm better than you." I think I messed that last part up. That's why I'm not a lead singer. I can't remember lyrics. But you get the concept that he engages in this fiddle off to retain his soul. So, to get the fiddle of gold, that is. I'm sorry. It's a hot day here, humid day here, and I'm sweating and drinking coffee. My nose is running from the allergies. Welcome to Texas. I do love Texas, though, I gotta say. God bless Texas. All right, so Robert Johnson, back to his story. He goes away, he comes back with a sound and a style that revolutionized music as we know it. That those basic little riffs that were present in his guitar parts set the standard for bands to adopt these sounds, for bass players to pick up that lower end, for piano players to copy that lower end on his guitar, for lead players to copy those slide sounds and those bending sounds of the guitar. And it has made modern rock and roll is just basically, it's just based off of Robert Johnson. And that's why so many rockers tip their hat to this long since deceased guitar player from Mississippi. Now, did he or did he not sell his soul to the devil? Well, at the age of 27, when he was just beginning to become famous for becoming this massively entertaining guitar player who was doing revolutionary things on the guitar and creating a new sound, that at the peak of his career at 27, he was poisoned and he died in a juke joint. Well, he died later after being poisoned in a juke joint. You know, it's he drank a bottle of whiskey that already had the seal broken on it. And whether his poisoning was intentional or accidental, I guess no one did. There wasn't a whole lot of CSI back then, so I haven't really determined if there was a culprit behind his murder. Some say it was a jealous musician who did not like his newfound fame and decided to pay him back with a little dose of the devil's juice in some poison there, and that it was the devil behind it. You know, the most ironic thing about the Robert Johnson story is that right after he died, he got discovered by the rich aristocracy, the music nerds of New York City, discovered Robert Johnson's music, and they put together a exposition of the blues where they were going to show the blues off to all of the New York aristocrats at Carnegie Hall. And they sent a scout to Mississippi to find Robert Johnson, only to find out that he was already dead for 6 months, and that they did not have a star for their show. The man that was putting this out, you know, this concert at Carnegie Hall, believed so much that Robert Johnson was the core soul of the blues movement that the opening act for his show was not a live band or a live artist performing the blues, but was a phonograph on stage playing one of Robert Johnson's records in Carnegie Hall. And to me, this all has so much the earmarks of the devil, that, you know, Robert Johnson sold his soul to be famous, but he didn't put the little, he didn't add the line, he'd like to be alive and famous. That he may have said, I want to perform at Carnegie Hall. Well, he did get to perform at Carnegie Hall. Well, virtually, his music was performed at Carnegie Hall, just not live. So the devil always turns and screws you. He always turns and stabs you in the back. So I just think that's one of the most ironic things. But, you know, Robert Johnson died at the age of 27. And whether this was already an existing practice amongst the demonic to go after, you know, young musicians, offer them what they wanted, what their heart's desire was, in exchange for their eternal soul, whether this was a thing that was common back then or since Robert Johnson has become a thing. And you can go and see my story where I was approached by, I believe, the devil himself, or someone definitely representing the devil himself. And, you know, I passed on the deal because Jesus Christ is my Savior, and He was then, and He always will be, because I took Him into my heart before I was old enough to know anything, just as a child, and He's just been my constant friend. And I will never turn my back on Jesus. So many times people think I do because I do things that they don't agree with, but I've never turned my back on Jesus, and I never ever will. So, but I find it really interesting that Robert Johnson died at 27, and he may have been the first member of a thing that's become known as the 27 Club. Now, the 27 Club is a group of young musicians who have all died at the age of 27. I think the very first one after Robert Johnson was Brian Jones. A lot of us know the lineup of the Rolling Stones today, but few people know that there was a multi-instrumentalist at the beginning of the career of the Rolling Stones named Brian Jones, dead at 27. Janis Joplin. Many people know the story of this great female blues and R&B artist, rock artist. And Janis Joplin died at the age of 27. Jimi Hendrix died at the age of 27. Jim Morrison, dead at the age of 27. Jim Morrison, the leader of the band The Doors. Kurt Cobain shot himself with a shotgun at his Seattle home at the age of 27. And Amy Winehouse died from alcohol poisoning at the age of 27. Now, that's just the most famous ones. There are literally hundreds of musicians, actors, artists, and entertainers who have all died mysteriously at the age of 27. Suicides, overdoses, alcohol poisonings, freak accidents, and all of them occurring when these artists are at the age of 27. Now, if you are a fan of this channel, you have seen my True Crossroads story. And after researching this project of the 27 Club and looking at all of these famous and not so famous, they didn't have to be famous to die at 27. Is this what happens when you sign the Faustian contract? And why are some destined to die at 27 while others that signed the deal too live to be old, like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and I can't remember this guy that talks like this. What is his name? You know who I'm talking about. Like a Rolling Stone. He's still around. In fact, he said the reason he's still touring at his old age is because he has to keep up his end of the deal. And maybe that's why these people that die at 27, are they some kind of sacrifice? Is this some kind of demonic sacrifice? Why do some get to live to be old when they've signed the deal with the devil, and some die at 27? Are those the ones that didn't willingly walk into it? Are those the ones that had to be really persuaded? Are those the ones that woke up and wanted out? Why did they die at 27 when others lived to be, old touring musicians? So that's an interesting question. And when researching this, I got a chill down the back of my spine, and I remembered that conversation I had with the guy from Entertainment Amalgamated or whatever his card said. The guy that told me I'd have to give up my faith in Jesus if I wanted to be a professional musician. And when I refused, he told me my career was over. And I guess in a way it kind of was. I was destined after that for a life of hardcore honky-tonkin' on the lowest level, on the lowest rung of the music business, when many would say I had what it took to be famous. But I have to ask myself, had I taken that deal? I was about 22. No, see, this was it happened in 1991, so that would have been 1993 when it happened. So I was 25. Would I have taken that deal, had a 2-year meteoric rise to fame, just to die and be another member of the 2700 Club, or the 27 Club, 2700 Club, the 27 Club? I will say this. Since that incident, I've spent my life trying to convince young musicians that trying to get a record deal, trying to get become a mainstream pop, or rock artist. I've spent my life trying to get them to understand that that's the devil's business. It's ran by the devil. The devil controls it all. Everyone in that's taken the deal and sold their soul to the devil. There's not a righteous person in all of the music business. Not one. There's plenty that pretend, but I promise you, when push comes to shove, the devil's got their hooks in that person, and they will always side with evil against good. And I am convinced of this, and I've spent a great deal of my life turning musicians away from the business and telling them, for instance, hey, we're blessed nowadays. My generation was a little different. There was one way to the top, and that was it. If you didn't catch that ride, you didn't get to go to the top. But nowadays, with the internet, somebody like me broadcasting from a van down by the river or a tiny, off-grid cabin in the woods can become somewhat well known, if not famous. It's amazing that somebody making music in their bedroom can now have the kind of reach through the internet and technology that was once only available to those who took the deal with the devil, who signed on the dotted line and gave their soul away. And now you can succeed without it. But don't take the deal. Don't let them give you a shortcut. Don't let them give you, tell you that there's a free ride to the top. Do it on your own terms. Do it using this new technology, and you might have a chance of your music making it out to the people. But I'll tell you this, the record labels are evil, and they are tore up from the floor up. So just avoid that whole mess unless you're ready to sell your soul to the devil. All right, we'll talk to you next time on Coffee Talk.